Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our IX Forum 2022. Before we open, some reminders. Those of you who are following us remotely, and as this is a on-site event, the certificate will be available just for those who are here in presence. And those of you who are following us remotely, you may participate. There is a technical agenda which is extremely rich, especially throughout the end of the day. You'll be able to talk to us. You may also interact throughout the chat. If there are any YouTube questions, someone will stand up and address it over the mic. So feel free to address your questions remotely. Those of you who couldn't make today, join us remotely. Just visit our link at YouTube. As I said, today is we have a very rich agenda, starting by CMAT, followed by CDN Global and Cisco, addressing routed optical networking. We have another presentation addressing manners and the implementation status in Brazil. In the afternoon session, we are going to have terabyte Ethernet protocol, what to expect after 400 gigabytes internet. And by the end of the day, we are going to have a very interesting roundtable addressing neutral networks. A number of providers representing RNP will be joining this roundtable, which will be extremely interesting. And Infrapedia and Talk to IX. This event will be available at our YouTube channel. Those who couldn't make yesterday, and for lunch we have some suggestions. There are several restaurants in the surroundings, so if any one of you are kind of lost, don't know where you may have lunch, just check it out our infrastructure material, and you'll be able to find some interesting recommendations. Let me now thank my sponsors. The 12th Infrastructure Internet is a joint effort by nic.br, CGI.br, and we have Connectway, Netflix, Abranet, Edi Uno, Telika Technologies, Global IP Network, NTT, Logicalis, Cisco Partner, Siena Electronet, Fibra Brazil, CDN Star, Flex Optics, WZ Tech Networks, Accent, Regio Networks, Meta, and TLU1 Networks. Let's now watch our sponsors' videos. Internet has its own life, 5.3 billion people connected all over. Today, we wouldn't imagine living an offline life. 22 years ago, it was founded, and it changed completely the way as the society gets organized. There are several players who are key in this endeavor to have a fair and transparent internet where infrastructure is key. Technologies and applications, they guarantee continuous internet expansion throughout digital development. The Brazilian Association of Internet, Abranet, works around that ecosystem where we have a internet value chain as a representative agency, which is part of a heterogeneous number of companies. That's why Abranet members, they are diverse. They are connectivity providers, small and medium-sized telco companies, data center, market center for pay tax environments, and altogether they become stronger at Abranet, which is the first Brazilian Internet Association, which advocates for its members and it's actively in all powers of our political chamber. Abranet conditions, they are relevant and they define to set public policies and regulamentations to the internet. Abranet offers to their members new market trends, business models, and innovations to allow companies to become more competitive. It has an open channel to its members, and it also allows a number of events that foster networking and to oversee new business opportunities. This is Abranet, and not only. Join us.
NIC.br, o núcleo de informação e coordenação do .br, que além de registros de nomes de domínios, investe em análise e tratamento de incidentes de segurança, projetos de tecnologias de redes e operações, pesquisas que trazem indicadores sobre o uso das tecnologias da informação e comunicação, implementação de pontos de troca de tráfego local na internet, projetos que contribuem no desenvolvimento global da web e muito mais. Tudo isso porque o NIC.br é uma entidade civil de direito privado e sem fins lucrativos, que mantém uma estrutura de registro de domínio segura, estável e de confiança, e reverte parte do que você paga pelo seu domínio no desenvolvimento de infraestrutura, trazendo benefícios para todos que usam a internet no Brasil. Toda essa inovação, tecnologia de ponta, segurança e infraestrutura só é possível porque você tem um domínio .br. NIC.br, sempre em busca do melhor para a nossa internet.
We'll talk about CIMET, Milton. Good morning. CIMET project, since its very beginning, back in 2006, CIMET has empowered end users for Brazilian web quality. We have developed CIMET over platforms which are software via web, software to Android, software to iOS, and for domestic routers that can support PWRT. Now we are moving forward. In addition to that, we want to empower providers. Next presentation, we will address novelties that are being developed by our indicators and measurement teams. Hello, I'm Holger. I work for NIC.br Septron, which is the measurement department and indicators. And the main goal of today's presentation is to let you know how measurements and CIMET products may help providers to offer a web of quality to their end users. Some figures addressing our evolution. So far, we have had 20 million different measurements, and such a growth, it's not from a volume perspective, but also reach. We have measurements being conducted almost all over the national territory. We have just 60 municipalities missing to be covered. And there is a great reach for autonomous systems where those measurements are heard. We have over 8,000 autonomous systems which are measured by CIMET. Over the map, you can see that there are just a few spots which have not been measured yet in the Amazon region, in the Meridional region, and we do hope that very soon the whole map will be covered. What do? We have two main pillars. First, internet providers, yourselves, and that is the main focus of my presentation. And we have a second pillar, which is also very important, that is the public sector, Brazilian public sector. Projects, they are very efficient, and would like to share some of our achievements. Briefly, I will hand over to Paulo, who will talk about the public sector projects. Hello there. I hope that you are all awake, and I'm here to share some of the initiatives carried out by CIMET to the public sector. We know that a great share of the worldwide population, they are connected, but yet we have an important share of our population which is not yet connected. And NIC.br, throughout internet indicators, supports the private public sector, the academy, with analysis and data that will steward those connectivity activities that will support areas where connection and internet is not yet in accordance to our levels of qualities, and that aims to support different sectors such as health, education, and others. CIMET activities to the public sector.
And this started in 2018 with the Ministry of Education. We developed an internet quality gauge for Brazilian public schools or state schools in Brazil. So we have now a map of over 52,000 schools, and these are just state schools. So we can evaluate connection or reception quality regularly, and also to provide this data to society for public policies to be developed based on this empirical data. In other words, based on reception quality. So we have 138,000 public schools, of which 50,000 or a bit more we can provide support to. Another initiative was the evaluation of healthcare units. So we also have an internet quality measuring system to provide this information, and then we can add that information to a portal, and then we look for the institution and we check connection quality. And these are also data use initiatives. So we need to provide support. And these initiatives are a reference, both in Brazil and abroad. We also get support from UNICEF, where we have, so the education data comes from NIC.br. Now, this is about the use of quality data to practice an AI-supervised model with a random forest model to try to predict the type of technology that is found in these schools we are providing support to in this project. So we know where we have fiber delivered to the schools or any other type of technology. Then the public and private sector can act, whether they're providing money for them to improve their quality, or if you have technology that is out of date, then you may have an investment policy to provide better connection technology. I won't explain the charts, but they show the importance of variables in the model, uploading, downloading, number of autonomous systems. So with this, we can classify the type of connection in the schools in the city of São Paulo, but also, of course, in other places in Brazil. On the left-hand side, we have a bar chart showing that optic fiber prevails. But then we have other types, coaxial cables, metallic cables, ADSL, and also satellite VSAT, so the idea was to have that broken down into different technology types. So with these meters, we can provide that data to society so that society can take action. Here are partners: Ministry of Education, TCU, FIESP, ITU, GIGA, UNICEF, RNP, and the Lehman Foundation. Now, Holger, over to you. This study, predictability study or technology predictability study of accesses, it has been proven that they can get that from CIMAT's measurement. And that knowledge is relevant, of course, for public managers to make decisions. Our second target audience and our major target audience, in fact, are internet providers. So what do we propose? We have a lot of measuring experience, and we want to help you understand, maintain, and even improve the quality of the internet service that you provide to your clients, providing then adoption and deployment. We believe we have a lot to add in terms of measuring and monitoring, and this is what many providers already do. So we have another perspective here, and depending on the size and maturity of providers, we can provide a more essential service or just a complementary service. So with this proposal, the idea is to provide a solution based on 3 pillars. We have a portal called AS. This provides provides providers with the measuring results. Then we have a new product category that is not that widely known, and that is the CIMAT server and tester. That's a measuring probe and a BGP root collector. So although we have measuring, we have CIMAT meters, we have complementary measurement, especially of the probe, CIMAT AS, and that's all provided on the portal for everyone to be able to use them in their daily management activities. Now, another element of our solution, let's go one by one. So we have the AS portal. The idea is for it to be a single portal delivering data of all CIMATs and NIC-BR measurement projects. It will be launched today, and the idea is for it to grow as it gets more and more information, new analyses, and it will generate value over time for providers, for internet providers. It will be really a portal that will add a lot of information with many categories. This portal aims at encouraging collaboration among providers. And all these screens, they can be linked for people to share analyses. They can have access to the same screens under the same parameters, and this will make collaboration and joint analysis easier. The categories we use in this portal include three major categories, right? Measuring, and that's for user experience. Then measuring that we call network infrastructure. That's for the provider network more. And then routing analysis or analyses. And then the devices that might be linked to the portal. So in user experience, we have the CEMAT measuring that you know about the internet quality, right? And this is provided as a dashboard, and it's broken down into meter type or address family before or IB6, and then IPv4 and IPv6, and then if you need to provide support to users, you can also pull that particular measuring or measurement of that user and check that and use that information to take action. In terms of infrastructure, we monitor our provider IX provider connection, and we then measure a lot of that was related to IX, like autonomous systems or CDLs. And we also check whether it complies with standards. One of the points of our PAS or AS portal is to educate providers about modern standards and how to adopt them. So that's possible to do this, and also network performance measures, again with this probe, AS probe. And then routing. Again, I'll give you more details of how that takes place. So we see BGP table statistics and how it evolves over time. So that is the AS portal. Now in the second pillar of our solution, we have a CEMAT-MP test server inside the provider network. So that's new. Before we had a route to IX, and now providers can install this test in their own network. We also have a CEMAT-MP for measuring, and we can choose which provider you will measure. Let's make this clear. How can you install the server into your network? It's a virtual machine that can be downloaded into the portal, from the portal, and you have some technical requirements. You have to be able to execute the virtual machine. We have all these technologies provided. This machine needs an IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. We also recommend a dedicated interface to ensure you have good testing. Processing capacity, it depends on the volume, traffic volume that is found. You may have 1 gigabit, then you need to set up 4 CPU groups, and for 10 you need 8 virtualized CPU cores per interface. In terms of memory, from 8 to 16 gigabytes and 25 gigabits in terms of hard disk. Now the instructions, the way to start installing these tests are all found on our portal. in this pillar, or what complements for CIMAT measuring, we have our CIMAT AS measuring probe. And this is one of the premises of this project. How can you, as we give up that measuring end to end, we have this probe with the test provider to make complementary measurements with our server, our anchor server, or other autonomous systems. And these are non-volumetric tests. So we have no problem really listening to these tests from this point. So I have two types of measuring and then the autonomous systems, and this is delivered within the portal so providers know how they can reach these autonomous systems, or if they can see any anomaly and then take action accordingly. Now there's a second virtual machine that is obtained from the portal. It has smaller, lesser hardware requirements. So you need an IPv4 and IPv6 addresses, but it cannot be the same. You also need a network interface that's dedicated to the virtual machine, not the same as the test server. These tests, they're non-volumetric. And with the test server, they are volumetric. So there's this physical interface. So the CIMAT test might affect these measurements, and these are very granular measurements. We look really into all the details. Latency tests, for instance, or jitter tests. So you need precision. And this is why we recommend, even if you listen to both machines, you need separate interfaces. Then we have the CPU core again, for 2 to 4 gigabytes for RAM. And these two virtual machines are installed together. You can use your own network, and you also need to listen to the virtual machine. I mean, the measuring probe. But everything is explained on the portal, and everything is automated. And then we have the SARA route connector. SARA is a project that collects routing information and also stores that information and analyzes it. Then we have a session, PGB session, and we do periodic dumping and also store a continuous flow of updates so we can do time analysis, statistical analyses, or also historical analyses. If you have any questions about the routing activity of the provider in the past. So we can recommend, make recommendations, detect anomalies, and we can look at routing between these two autonomous systems, because it also helps user experience, or influences user experience at the end of the day. And the final element we have provide a solution for, that's the third pillar, and that's the CIMAT meter family. We have CIMAT Web, CIMAT Box, CIMAT Mobile, and Android, for both Android and iOS. And also the at CIMAT's measuring engine. It can be used in other contexts. And what has been predicted for 2023? What can you find? Our focus will be on PAS. We have a great potential. We can add new analyses, new information, categories. So when you look at each category within PAS, in terms of user experience, PAS is already effective for specific cases. So you can learn about all these use cases. How can it really be useful for clients when clients report that there's some problem? How can you pull the measures of that particular user? I think it's really useful for this particular use case, or for detecting anomalies, for instance. In terms of network infrastructure, there are many additional measures. So we have a lot of them from our measuring probe, SAMAT AS. And then PAS has a purpose. In addition to measuring, detecting, and communicating what can be improved, it also helps make that improvement effective. So you link these measures with linking it with educational content in terms of performance and compliance. If you don't do anti-spoof filtering, so that will be the portal will open the eyes, and you will find it in the portal as a way of helping put that in place. And the third axis in routing is the historical consultation, and that is better than what providers can do within their router. So we have the whole history. It can check that history and analyze particular issues. And also detection. In other words, to detect interesting conditions, for instance, route sequences, and also sequestration of routes, and provide that to providers, analyze quality, and also to make suggestions.
We have to correlate information. We can do that isolated, but the idea is to work jointly so we can help to leverage a number of assessments and root cause analysis. How about the indicators? We have two of those, the CMAT box and CMAT mobile. CMAT box has a huge potential to providers because it performs continuous and frequently measurements. You may set that up. You can decide upon the sort of measurement that you are looking for because it does not change the deployment. There is no Wi-Fi network throughout the pathway of the measurement, so we measure whatever we have delivered differently from a Wi-Fi user. This has a great potential. And we work for compatibility. Our suggestion is that CMAT solutions, they are of easy implementation. CMAT box, logistics can be so helpful. And the way we implement CMAT box is throughout the CPI and to flash the film. That is not yet a facility. If we had a CPS in the national market that they would have to place it, it comes with embarked CMAT. So the CMAT box nucleo in a device let's try to work on that. As important as the CMAT box it is to implement the project. We got in touch with providers, and we see some ways to work with CMED box, not necessarily to be available at all networks to all subscribers. You may have that temporarily. We may also install measurement monitors such as Raspberry to place that at the POP and not at the user's home. We have to explore CMED box. As to CMED mobile, we have new measurements, new calibrations, and we have to explore that potential, such as the CMED box to measure the Wi-Fi network, which is the main headache for providers. If we integrate the mobile with CMED box, we can tell if the problem is within the Wi-Fi network or not. We can also show the CMED box measurements in the app. We may drive some tests. And to close, register at our portal. Users, they have an account, a personal account, and then they ask for a relation to the autonomous system together to the BR register. And we know that this kind of relation is legitimate, and they may have access to data of that within the pass. We think about autonomous systems consultant. They may request that to their providers, clients, and use pass to deliver service to providers. That's it. Thank you. Hello, I am Douglas Fisher. Congratulations for this project, which is so cool. Congrats. Some questions about the authentication process. As far as I understood, this is a unique database. And you guys from register.br, do you consider any integration based on IoT? That would be so beneficial. Wonderful information, great. And probably other institutions will feel like using them. The AS maybe would like to get information in a structured manner. I don't know if that is part of your scope or not. And some time of export for pools, which is cool. You may have multiple standpoints related today to Atlas nowadays, but you know, why not? So authentication, data export, and ISOX pools. Thank you. Indeed, there is no integration in the authentication database. Neither IX, but at least in the Septron environment, that could be something that we could think about. Second, exports. Today we just have the portal information, but I agree we may have an API which will multiply the data potential and data use. It's a matter of roadmap. And second, integration to other measurement projects. Let's talk over the coffee break, okay? So we don't run late. Brazilian internet has improved considerably thanks to Nick.br and Denver's. CMAT would be useful to understand the traffic of the package. Within CMAT, are you willing to collect something? What is the radio intensity to collect more information to help with providers' diagnostic measures? If that is possible, to collect required information to better understand the problems and to correlate them well along those lines. The app integration, such as the CMAC POCs, we have to feed ourselves from you providers to see what else could be done. Okay, thanks and congratulations. Last question. What is the quality of my internet? But such an analysis is done from a cell phone. Could you collaborate with the information presentations in the result page? Wi-Fi network. Thank you to both of you. Okay, goodbye. Next, I'd like to invite Claudine and Marcos from Global to address the CDNs. How about the Global CDN project? Can you share that? Hi there, I'm Marcos Santana. It's great to see you all here after 2 years of remote events. Let's talk about CDN global expansion. So I am Santana. I am a leader of digital products for infrastructure products. Claudine, it's a guy that you all have met before. He's like a politician. He talks just to everyone. After this talk, Claudine will be available. So how about our CDN journey? What we have been doing to deliver a good services. We have to talk about the Football World Cup and how we're going to get positioned to that. We have some more technical topics such as peering, open CDN, IX, internet exchange, traffic points, routing solutions, tools and troubleshooting, frequently asked questions, and operational contacts. How about our journey? Until 2019, we had two main data centers, one in Rio de Janeiro, another one in São Paulo, where the global digital content would be spread from those two data centers. In addition to that, we had some partners, which was the former Verizon and IK Plus. Our concern is that Global has over 100 affiliated companies, and take into account the consumption level, it didn't make any sense to care about distribution throughout our partners. Our content distribution is quite regional. Some regions of the country are little populated by the commercial CDNs, and that strategy had to be changed. As of 2019, we created that expansion strategy, and the main key to such a switch was our affiliated agencies. As I said, we have over 100 affiliated branches in the country, and that was key to allow a better CDN distribution. We started with Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, and our journey started in Fortaleza. We have performed a test, a pilot test. We had a buffer ratio of 1.8, which is the number of users that were using some sort of buffer. And we had 3 cache global servers that were used as a try, and we during our first cache at Fortaleza, we managed to downsize that to half, which showed that our strategy was effective. After that, our strategy became much more powerful. We disseminated that throughout the country. We have a tier 0, which are the main data centers, and we started exploring tier 1. We increased, and how are we doing right now? We have tier 2 and tier 3, over 150 POPs all over the country, over 20 PNI IX, and over 20 exchange internet traffic points. Those yellow tiers, those tier 1 and 2 represented here in yellow, they offer PNIs, few CDN and content providers are able to disseminate such a great amount. As to tier 3, that server was developed internally to deliver video content, but more important than that, they have to deal with the content consumption in live stream. Global has over 100 live channels, and then we have to deal with this type of consumption. We developed server, 3 models, ML and SML, with up to 9 of those up to 36 gigabytes, and we can request those throughout caches. There is a eligibility policy. You have to talk to our project team, and if so, we are responsible to perform the whole activation process. And that's not all. What sort of return are we getting back in our platform? We haven't got absolute numbers, but we can tell, or we can see some results. The green line for our average buffer bit rate, we have a 30% improvement, and that will keep growing. That is supported by 4K, VOD, and live streaming. Recently, we broadcasted the Rock and Rio show with a great level of success. While we increase quality, we decrease some users' rates, which is represented here by the red line. That is the time that the user takes to start playing a video, and the buffer rate, which is a buffering that really low quality, which is experienced by users, and we managed to decrease that considerably, and we celebrated that thanks to that strategy in place. How about the Football World Cup? We are very excited and looking forward to that. We are going to broadcast that through open channel, closed cable TVs, and digital products. We are going to have a global play, Sport TV, GE, and global broadcast television. The World Cup will take place even before some peak times, and we have a booth outside in the exhibition area, and please visit us so we can share that from our own perspective. This Football World Cup will be broadcasted throughout 4K HDR. The same content is six-fold higher than a full HD content, which is usually broadcasted by our channels. So during the football games, we are going to have a much higher consumption, higher than the evening time. So we are going to be together for the football Brazilian team, and also we have to be together for more peering that will be necessary. Now I hand over to Claudine.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. So with regard to peering, when we have tiers 0, 1, and 2, we always, our initial connection is with ix.br, and we can get that through all these ISPs through ADN, but not all ISPs announce their routes on IDN. So we recommend that peering is done with Global, and we have the option of going to ISPs that want dedicated connection, that cannot connect to IXBR, so they can connect directly with us. So we have a portal that's peering at Global, so we have indications for the locations. So we have all our peering policies there. That makes it much easier for peering requests to be sent to Global. In terms of PNI, as Marco said, we have over 20 locations for PNI. In the west, center-west of Brazil, the cities of Cuiabá, Campo Grande, or in the interior of the states of São Paulo, Paraná, even in the middle of the country or in most remote areas, we can develop connections there. We can reach more ISPs that wouldn't have the conditions of really meeting the requirements of cache or GCA. In addition, we should also highlight that we're also investing in infrastructure in both Rio and São Paulo, providing new options there. Especially in São Paulo, we focus on the Paulista Avenue region. And then in the interior of the state, as many ISPs cannot reach this particular location, we also have an ISP4 for those that want to do PNI with us. In terms of IX connections, We have connections with over 20 IXs. We really changed these connections. We have extended many of our regional IX connections, Belo Horizonte, Recife. We have 80 giga in capacity there. We believe that these PDDs have a good growth potential. And we also work in other IXs in Curitiba and Brasilia as soon as possible to have 6 giga connections there. We activated 6 giga connections there to provide a better experience to users that participate in these IXs and that they can connect with us with a good user experience. This is a chart showing our evolution in PTT participation. So we had participation in 4 IXs at the beginning, IX.br, and then 4 IXs in Sao Paulo and Miami, and now we have 21. We participate in 21 IXs in Brazil and also abroad. In terms of capacity, we are also making strides, especially in the regional IXs from 0 to over 1 tera of capacity in the smaller PTTs. In São Paulo, we had 600 giga in capacity. Now we have almost 6 tera to everyone. And in Rio, we're moving on to 6 giga in capacity for the World, 800 giga in capacity for the World Cup. In addition to these, that are just for global infrastructure, we also participate in infrastructure sharing projects in OpenCDN in Salvador and the city of Manaus. So we have our cache there, and OpenCDN is one way of reaching participants with IX in these locations. We also have similar projects in ANED in Campina Grande and the Univares project in the city of Lajeado. One important thing to say for you to better understand how our process works in CDN. This is about how users are directed to particular points. In this, we don't use cache or IDGN cache or delivery, BGPN. So we use the network prefix of the user, so we find in all locations the lowest prefix in the global network, and within these smaller prefix, we find all locations in the lowest AS path. And if there's a tie, like between São Paulo and Fortaleza, then users, suppose they're in Recife. Recife is much closer than Fortaleza than São Paulo, so Recife's users will be, of course, better using Fortaleza. We use other criteria too. If a particular link, if they have delivery saturation, we won't use that particular user for the user to search content in that particular location. If we have live content and we have any cache view problem, if it's too slow from an X milliseconds, and we can test it there, and the live connection needs that, of course, seeking for that content all the time. So if you start having any delay, you can reduce live delivery in that location. And then other parameters, simpler parameters to provide better quality, CPU, memory, among others. So we may decide not to recommend that particular location as a point of delivery. And as a result, that made all the part about we usually deliver 3 POPs, the reference POP, and the other fallback POPs should the player not be able to carry or download the video there. So they'll look for that from another location. Troubleshooting. We have a browsing report. That's browsereport.globo.com/ISP for internet providers. So from your network, you can find out what Globo is seeing. And that prefix, for instance, Globo saw that I was in this red dot. And these other 8 dots were possible points for delivering content to users. And in this case, it was me, right? Claudine. User Claudine. This is not necessarily good in visual terms, but it provides, it doesn't provide all the information. Then we have all these tables that show geographic distances in kilometers of each of these POPs. And then we have ISBF for that particular, AS path for that particular global POP. So you see the AS path that Globo is seeing in this route and the geographic distance as well. On the same page, we have a second part, and that's a test section. And then you can do basic testing, routing testing, for instance, that is needed for analyzing any problem that might involve any risk in the network conditions. Whenever we get a call, we provide this kind of report and recommend that providers execute that report. So providers may reach their own conclusion about the kind of problem that may be taking place. Some frequent questions that we get. How can I find what POP my user is being directed to, redirected to? So you should look at browserreport.com or /ISP.globo.com/ISP, and then it may not be going to the preferred POP, so it may be going to another POP. How can I prioritize my connection via OpenCDN or any other traffic, or my PNI or any others? So you can manipulate ads for Global, announcing more specific prefixes. That's one option. But we usually recommend that you do manipulation in BGP in this case. So you do a prepend, and then of course the global platform will understand that is not a preferred route. And suppose your prefix is being detected in the wrong geolocation. So what should I do in this case? In this case of geolocation problems, what Global uses as a base, and it's on the page, and you get all the links, and that's the max find base. So when a provider acquires, or when other providers acquire it, when you have relocation of networks from one city to another, pay attention to these locations to make sure that this maximized base is the right one. So you can make the request and also request a correction of base so that it is done accordingly. This is needed especially for fixed networks. It's simpler when you have a mobile network. You don't usually have that problem. Another very common question is about CGNAT. So can you do CGNAT? Can you recommend CGNAT for Global? You have many providers have asked me this, and we know there's technical advantages. You would avoid going through CGNAT, and you would improve your performance. But our platform, it needs the public IP, all these validations, geolocation validations, and it is really linked to the public IP. So many of these functions are not necessarily on Global's network, but also in partner networks in GCP or external networks. This is why we need to announce this CGNet block. That wouldn't be a good solution. And then the most common question, how about IPv6? Well, we are again making strides. We're not ideal yet at this point, but we have evolved considerably. All our servers were set up with IPv6. We're using IPv6 in all IXs we are present in. We're getting IPv6 blocks, all of them. And we're also running quality access tests with our inner users. And we expect that by the beginning of the year, all our IPv6 processes are okay to be then announced for our CGN video platform. And if you go to this platform, you can, of course, move on to other products. Our global supported portals, our G1 portals, for instance. This is our operating contact page or slide. So we here show that if you have a problem, any problem with global play access problems, our recommendation is, even for internet providers, for this, you go to our help service, our help desk. That's where they will tell you whether it's a network problem, a video problem, a server problem. They will make that analysis, and then they will send you where you need to be sent. Our NOC Global, our NetOps team discusses or treats network problems, but network problems alone, some package problems, if the PNI went down, that sort of thing. It will be treated by the NOC. But you always begin with the help desk. Then we have the peering page for peering associations. That's peering.globo. Then GCA, gca.globo.com. Thank you so much. Thank you, Max, so much. Now we have a question on our chat from Danielle Sato. Claudine, Brazil offers great challenges in a huge territory. Have you been looking for direct partnerships? Well, we know that Brazil is huge, so we developed GCAs through VIX connections. With that, we wouldn't be able to reach a provider in the interior of the state of Mato Grosso that would have difficulty connecting. So we developed GCAs with this in mind, especially GCAAS, the smaller box. It was developed for designed for these smaller providers in these more remote locations. All right. Well, I think we have room for another 2 questions. Pedro, good morning. All right, go on. Well, in the international peering, have you ever made any analysis of, for example, dealing with national traffic? Well, we usually make that analysis, and we avoid having national traffic through it. If there's any national access that comes through that international peering in Miami, we try to get in touch with the provider to change this, to relocate their route. We have not any capacity. Our content is very national, so what we have abroad is really to meet their international needs. If you have someone, the national looking for content there, it's a problem to us. This is something we try to avoid. Right. So national or non-national, do you look at geolocation, whatever it is, based on /24 or a 32? And in addition, if you consider Google, for example, they use 3 IPs for each server or modem. One is high traffic, where you have CGNet bypass, and the other is public. So that's a complementary suggestion. For you having an initial app, it goes through the IP, rated, or that's it? Good morning, Marcos and Claudine. My question is, where does traffic come from? For us, I try to talk to you, but we are connected to the São José do Rio Preto IX, so most of our traffic goes through this IX. But then something may happen. Our traffic may fall abruptly, and it will go down there and increase in the other IX, in the Equinix. So those that are in the Rio Preto IX are not overloaded as far as I know. So what leads to this change? And why is the Equinix IX a priority rather than the IXBR? I believe most companies connected to both IXs, they have greater capacity in IXBR. So it's much more likely that it will saturate in Equinix IX. With regard to the CGNet bypass, considering all the difficulties that this is not possible today, can you work on that? Even when you activate IPv6, there will still be many legacy devices that will never have smart TVs, IPv6, and then you need a CGNet bypass there because there's a lot of traffic, and that makes a huge difference to us providers. Do you think that can be adjusted?
Well, first about Rio Preto. This is our tier 2. What may happen, which will decrease the quality of the traffic, is if we stop disseminating that live content. We have a link between São Paulo and Rio Preto. If we lose link quality, and that will impair our and quality live, which is more sensitive to any changes, they will no longer be delivered. This is not the only scenario. There are some others, any sort of issue that may take place. We are doing our best to allow more resilience to the limitations, to avoid that to take place. That is a 2023 roadmap, but it happens. How to prioritize IXBR versus Equinix? Well, as we have more idle capacity, our standard policy is prioritizing that Equinix IX is more frequently used because our portal is underused. How about CGNet? Well, we are not going to discuss anything about CGNet while we do not develop IPv6, the solution V6. So we better wait after talking internally. We are prioritizing IPv6 and CGNet, as we have some other issues. We do not want to motivate such a development. IPv6. Thanks, Claudine and Marcos. They are going to be available throughout the coffee break. Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Adalberto and Tiago Francisco. They will talk about RON, Routed Optical Networking. Hello, good morning. It's always a great honor to be back at Nick.br stage. I am Adalberto Lins, System Architect for Cisco, and I hope I can share some new ideas and to clarify some of our terminology and what we have been doing in the industry from a routing perspective. My goal today is to share that with all of you. I have Tiago here with me today. Hello there, I am Tiago Ferreira. I am I'm in charge of developing ISP providers as well as Adalberto. Great. So a disclaimer first of all. This presentation has some technical information, some customers' testimonial, but we don't have much time. This presentation will be available on a PDF, so I will not gonna go into details. I just would like to simplify the concept and what is the idea behind it. What is the motivation? What has changed in the market? What were the technological drivers that allowed us to have that convergency idea? First of all, changes in economy, the economic part of it. How about the solution? I want to buy a system, a router. Optical part is less significant, less meaningful. Once we increase the velocity, the router becomes less significant for the solution as a whole. Optical part is still expensive. 25 tera IX. Well, the optical part is crucial to us. On the other hand, there is something very interesting, which is how to make miniatures of the components in the optical part, allowing more energy efficiency. And I also have a chance to get the whole system. And I'm able to place that within a JMIC. In addition, the ability that routers have, if we go through the evolution of the package process to IP, to OTN SONET, there is a huge difference. If we take a look at the optical spectrum, I would need too many routers, too much process ability to implement the optical part. This is no longer the case. Last year, we had equipments that once went through the 10 terabytes Today, a new ship can go over 5 tera. The concept is to bring benefits and optimize them. In the evolution of things, we have too much growth, which is organic, with more and more ability, and that keeps growing. There are some which are some concepts which are disruptive, and Cisco has been investing on that for a while. In the past, we had colorful J bits, and after 4 years ago, I came here to talk about POOF, and that has progressed. An evolution of that is the so-called optical networks. And Cisco is not the only one who is doing that. The industry is. We have several vendors, and the idea is quite simple. We had several layers, IP, interconnected. The goal is to simplify that as much as possible. How about photonic? Is that still available? Yes, sure it is. And I make the best use of idle capacity to have a more attractive cost and to change topology. Internet service providers, DCIs, point-to-point technologies that make sense, but technology behind that is much broader. Architecture that will depend on 3 aspects. First, hardware evolution. This material will be available to you for further look. A second pillar, services emulation. I want to be able to offer exactly the same services. I want to have a complete DWM with other services as well. And I had 2 scenarios being managed. I always had to capture that management. The idea is not to lose the TWM and the visibility that I had. And I also wanted to automatize both as being just one. So the idea is not just to gain in packs, but also in K-packs. This is one of the ideas only. I had a router that would connect to a gray interface requiring a fiber cable to connect to another gray interface for a switching and my optical DWDM. Ideally, services will integrate and I can do that directly into the router. This is another functionality to allow DWM to perform what DWM used to do. The transceiver DCO, what is that? Thanks to miniature digital coherent optic DCO. And today I can have just everything I had before in an optical, and now I have within a pluggable. It represents great savings. With the miniaturization, we are decreasing components, and we can do what MSA used to do in the past. I can put that within a GBIC. This is the main thing from a hardware perspective. This is the main concepts. The idea is to simplify, and this is a slide which I will need to repeat a couple of times. This is a simplest approach. This is a way to emulate the circuits throughout emulation. Talking a bit more about the hardware. After the ZRs was specified, there was another one happening in parallel. The idea was to get those systems that the optical ones that were proprietary, that would work just within the same point-to-point manufacturer, that could be somehow an open ROADM. There was an agreement in the industry that could be simpler and used in a short run. I can have different channels. You can see here the possibilities. And from a client side, I can have 400, 4 of 100, and 4 of 400. Here, just for your understanding in terms of distance, what is the framing, specification, data rate, but there will be another talk about that, so I will skip it. And here, nothing better than have an illustration. I may have a router with this optical at one side that will be linked to an expounder, which is a traditional DWN. Both will interact, reaching an end user at the opposite side. This I may deploy in a different topology, like 4 of 100, 100 from one derivator and another 100 living from a different one, that thanks to a legacy device or a remote device, which still cannot support 4 gigabytes, or maybe simply 1 of 400 or 4 of 100 mode. Some manufacturers, they work in parallel. We know that there is a lower power which requires a pre-amplification before it gets to the responder, and the industry is working on that. Now we are able to have the OpenZR Plus with a precification within the premix. I may have a pluggable with up to plus 2 dBm TX power with a proper wavelength, which will not require any external device. And here we are talking about deployment, evolution. Today we have 800 gigas and routers available for that. 1.2 terabytes. We don't have a router device ready for that, but we are improving it, and we might be very close to 2 tera in the near future. This is the 200 pluggable mode with its specs. This is another module with its specs as well. Now I'm gonna make a pause and go into details. The idea is to have just everything integrated into the router. This is just an example to illustrate. This is a model that we are going to release by the beginning of next year. Anywhere where a preamplification is required, or if I just want to amplify a signal, I have a router in the POP, and then I have another optical device to amplify it. And I have a bidirectional amplification with additional hardware and other devices. Well, if I have miniaturization for that, why don't I get the router power to do it? Let's suppose that I have two 400 giga portals. I want to send that to the MUX, amplify it to support up to 32 wavelengths. That may be a splitter, a passive coupler splitter, which I simply connect, and that's it. I have the low-end applications. All typical functionalities were carried out from an optical perspective without purchasing any additional elements which have to be fed. Instead of buying one whole equipment, you just have a new grid, and this is the reasoning behind it. Second, to emulate those services that it might not be your specific case. I may not need additional services, but if I have to emulate it, I do need something better. I have already spoken about segment routing benefits before. There is a tutorial addressing that. If you'd like to go in details about that segment routing, there is a lab to be offered to you.
And this is part of the automation and support for new services because it makes all the traffic engineering part easier and all the protocol stack is also simplified. And this is good for those that set things up, those that take care of this, and also for those who put that in place. You use fewer resources from routers and PLS suites when you use this concept. And the simpler the implementation, the easier it is to automate. So most of the automation and network provisioning is done through segment routing. At the beginning it was very new, remember 3-4 years ago? But today it's no longer news, right? So there are many people using it, and it gives us features that help in automation and problems that NPS alone wouldn't solve. So GPLS and PLS, so it gets native support for this type of topology. I need to use this design again, but I need the routers and point-to-point circuits, DWDM, and then also line emulation to provide support to other services. But if you just have an IP backbone, this may not be the case. But if you want 2CI for 2 data centers, and if you want, like on the next slide, you can, fiber channel, that one of the limits when you light the fiber with a IP device. We really want to stress that this is a real thing. It's already there, out there in the market. Of course, there's lots of room for improvement, but it's new, it's real, it's here for you. Now, private emulation standards, they're all here open for future reference for you. And all these things, we should be able to manage them all correctly. So from an DWDM standpoint, operating systems need to support the same setting features. If I want to set up frequency or my DB number transmission type of FEC TX shaping, all these channels need to be properly set up. So all the settings that are available in DWDM should also be in the router. Again, transparent to everyone, clear to everyone. For automation purposes, there's a whole monitoring and automation suite that can be, of course, brought together. The idea is to be independent of manufacturer. That's why you use open sources on both sides. No, when you look at all of them brought together, you have fast systems, and fiber channel need very low latency, but then router latency today tends to be higher than the ODM switch. So when you have transmission standards, I haven't added the slides to this deck, but DWDM systems should also be leaner, simpler, but they're still there. They're still present, but they're still important anyway. And then automation and operation simplification leads to what we call the new paradigm. Okay? Then case studies will be providing this presentation to you, so I'll let you read this later. These can be found on our website anyway. Can you, and also, this is being done in Brazil. Well, okay, I'd like to close. We're running out of time. There's a lot of technology for such a short amount of time. And I believe there are two major takeaways that we should stress. I've been working for Cisco for a year, and I have the same origin as you too. It may seem too much, but the industry is going towards this direction because of you. You need, when you think about the challenges of content providers or ISPs, when you need to cross large distances and increase capacity, you need to put some DWDM capacity technology to overcome these hurdles. And we had end-to-end DWM before, but 8 channels at least, and you don't need all that. You also provide system with 80 to 96 channels, again end-to-end, that we'll never use. So the proposal that Cisco is at the forefront of is to help clients and operators, many of whom are content providers that are also influencing this industry. The idea is to make high-capacity connections with distance tolerant, and also correcting what we call impairment problems or fiber distance problems. And the solutions are the size of a cigarette lighter. So this is what I want to give you as our first takeaway. The second takeaway, I'm in charge of Latin America, and even though these cases are international, we also have cases put in place in Latin America, including Brazil. But we don't have the NDA here signed to show them to you here, but I have followed that up, and I know there's always a use case available. My invitation to you, what I suggest you do is whenever there's a situation when you need to overcome a cost challenge, a distance, or a capacity hurdle, and then you look at use cases using coherent technology that we call router networking. In my last year working on this, whenever I talk to a client, we found a possible use case. A 40-kilometer metropolitan network, when you don't need end-to-end, you just need a small amplifier, or even amplifiers that are also miniaturized, and even long-haul situations for longer distances. And so you have simpler systems, and you reduce capacity, cost, and footprint of these solutions. In conclusion, I'd also like to say that this journey starts from use cases. So we have invited our clients, suggested they talk to us to understand what are the potential use cases and how we can think about putting that technology in place in the future. Not just Cisco's technology, but also from the entire industry. But in the last 10 years and the 6 billion investment that Cisco made, we are at the forefront of these solutions to provide support to clients like you, that so that you have more effective solutions and leaner, cleaner architectures that can now face the problems and the new challenges of 5G and other future technology. Thank you. And at the end, we have a summary for you to download. And these are our contact details. Feel free to get in touch. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Adalberto, Tiago. But unfortunately, we are running out of time, so Tiago and Adalberto will be here at the coffee break with us. We can talk. You can talk to them. We'll be back at 11:15, okay? Thank you.
Nomezinho. Eu tô com o headset dela aqui. Ó, tá vendo? No fundinho. Aí na hora que falava, eu parava. Suprimia. Ó, quer ver que elas estão falando, né? Ó. Ele vindo, tá vendo? Ó, já parou. Viu? Ou não? Nunca é massa. Parou. É a impedância da cápsula. Às vezes tem uma frequência do monitor. Quer trocar o dele também? Não, o dele tá bom. Quer ver, ó? O dela teve hora que veio forte, você viu? É que onde esse monitor tava lá, hoje eles passaram pra cá. Tem uma hora que tava no... Eu tava no outro canal. Ó. O dele tá bom. Viu? Uhum. Aí só tava raspando na máscara. Ó. O dela tava forte. Apesar que diminuiu um pouco agora no... É, na hora que falava diminuiu bastante. Deixa eu jogar esse monitor um pouquinho mais pra cá. Que é componente, cara. Ó, parou agora. Agora parou. Agora tá limpo. Tá limpo. É. O deles... O dela... O dela que eu preciso dar uma aumentadinha é no transmissor. Você percebeu que às vezes... Oh, deixa eu ligar, deixa eu dizer.
So now I have an announcement to make. If you have any lost object, it's in the cloakroom. You can look for the girls, right? At the front desk. I'd now like to invite Tiago Gonçalves, who will talk to us now. Tiago, over to you. It's about manners. Why? Can we apply HDMI here? Right, good morning everyone. I'm Tiago Felipe Gonçalves. I'm a network engineer and ambassador at Manners, and I'm also a consultant for IXBR. I'd like to tell you that I had a cold. I've done all the testing. Don't worry, I don't have COVID. My voice is a little different. A disclaimer, and this is my opinion, not my employer's opinion, okay? Let's make that absolutely clear. Why should we implement manners? Why? Help improve security routing on the internet. There are administrative, legal, social reasons, among others, to justify this. But most people who are here, engineers that keep everything working, we have other reasons. We like to lead a normal life, like sleeping properly, going to barbecue parties, and enjoying our holidays, our vacations. Engineers also deserve a normal life, in addition to all the other problems or aspects of a healthy life that they need. Anyway, this is a community project. The idea started in 2014. The idea was to improve internet security and internet routing in particular, which is expected of operators, but not always put into place. The idea behind manners is to have that documented and also to teach people, show people how things should be. Manners is a community project. Everything you find on the website, if you disagree with any action, with any point, everyone is entitled to speak their mind. It's not that things will change immediately, but decisions are made not by a single entity, but it's a group process. Network operators started in 2014. That's one of Manners' programs. Then we have Internet Exchange Points. That's 2018. And then Content Delivery Networks and Cloud Providers 2020. And we have recently a fourth program, Network Equipment Vendors. But I won't go into details about the actions that they take. Gilberto will talk about some of these points later on. You just go to Manners' website. Everything is explained there in detail. So there are some points that are important, and these are the ideals behind Manners. Filtering. We announce what we think is right. Then spoofing, anti-spoofing. Then coordination, which is something that people don't usually appreciate. But both globally and in Brazil, there's a lot of this. we don't have contact details. No one really cares about it. You only think about it when you have a problem and you need to talk to a particular ESR, but if you don't know people, until you get to CSN, you don't find anyone. This is important. It's not mandatory, but it is important. Then global validation. So in this case, you need to make sure that the other ESNs can validate their resources or features if you're on the net. And finally, or another aspect really is tools. No one really appreciate Looking Glass. When you have an ANS problem, you know, through the Looking Glass, you can identify a problem. And when everything is easy, I mean, if people come to you, you can save time and tickets and interaction. So it's highly recommended. Then there's having Looking Glass is highly recommended. And another crucial point is for manners is promotion. I may do my part correctly, but if the others are not doing it, I'll suffer like with everyone else. So the whole point about manners is not only to do your part, but also suppose I'm closing a peer with a particular ASN, or am I hiring some transit. You'll be helping the project out, helping the community, and in addition, you will be providing a better service to your network. You will have something that's much more reliable. So I believe that here we have network operators. I think the numbers are all right. This project has been expanding considerably, but we don't have the number of ASNs that, I mean, it could be larger, and that's not that difficult to do. It's interesting to see that this project is, we can make it work and expand. Most of the tools are probably known by you, but there are some tools that are important, really useful to our daily activities, and some people may not know them. So this is the whole point of it. We have a manners toolkit in our GitHub, so we have many, that's our repository for many setting tools. Take a look at it. They're really open there. If you find something and you want to add, just upload a PR and people will be really happy. The project is made up of all these actions, people participating. And then we have our observatory. Our observatory is transparent, and it will evolve depending on what the community requests. That's what we usually do. As with other systems, they use mainstream, SIDA report, ERR. So they put everything together and correlate information on a single interface. What else is upcoming? We will have an RPI for you to consume this data. So it's much more interesting because, I mean, checking dashboards all the time make little sense. This dashboard view, this is just for Brazil. We have recidivant or the guilty ones, and this is filtered to Brazil. But then we have a very good number for filtering. It's reasonably good for anti-spoofing, but the great part here, we don't have data about it. We don't have enough participants to collect that data. 86%, if you look at it, you say, okay, it's a good number, but it's not. If you don't have data, you can't really tell whether you're good or not. Now, the part about coordination, I have a really low number. So if you add your contact there, this can be done easily. It shouldn't be that difficult. And then, again, if you add your email, please put it in an inbox that people read. When you send an email, no one answers it. It's as though you had never sent it. Even if you were to give them, like, explain, look, this is not my problem, but just reply, say something, please. With ERL, we have a good value. And that's not that hard to create your own rows. And that would mean huge benefits. Even if you're not doing that in-house, even just by creating rows, you will be really helpful.
Over here, I'm going to emphasize the charts. In blue, it means Brazil. Each one of them, I'm comparing them to the RIR. M8, contact, registration, and M7, RPKI. And Brazil is below other RIRs. RPKI does not seem to have such a huge difference. It's still growing, that's positive, but the contact part, that is a failure, a native failure that we should better regulate and follow. We are not quite yet in the middle of the pre-sign prefixes, but since 18 and 19, there is a gradual growth. I see that as positive. It's growing slowly. IPv4, IPv6. Here there is a RIR chart. LACNIC growth, it's very large. I don't know the reason why. I have to search about that. For IPv6, we are much below, which doesn't make much sense. It seems that we have more allocated prefixes. There are several reasons for that. GRIP, that is a tool which collects web data, compile them, and they show suspect incidents in the web. That is used by manners upground. Some cases, lack of configuration. This is the best tool. Right in the beginning, that sounds to be a bit complicated in the beginning, not very easy to understand the messages, but there is a drop down which teaches that really well. There is a manual for that. And over here, you clean it, and then you place it to collect it once a day. If something changes, if there is a critical event, it's because something it might be wrong. Even if you just monitor it, you know that there is something going on wrong. LG, do you use it? I don't know. by filtered routers, you are going to find a high number of filtered routers, and then you're going to find wrong prefixes, ISN bogon, prefix bogon. IX has 19 filtering communities. If you click it here, you're going to find all of them. Alice has an API. Indeed, if we are getting that in the route server, if they are filtering it, are they just sending that to IXBR? I don't think so. So make the best use of that. Try to keep your DOSN clean. Peering DB. In addition to keep that updated. If the information is not here, deny the service. This is a way to keep data community with coherence with additional safety. And everyone is using that. Keep that updated. Peering DB. Our life became much, much easier after that. Manners Blue. That is just an idea, a recent idea. The working group started a while ago. I was talking to Andre. They're trying to create a secondary tier which will be validated in a more strict manner with some additional benefits. This started just a while ago. In addition, it's open for the community, not just for manners, but anyone who'd like to participate, get in touch with us. We have an open nomination for 3 seats. If you want to be nominated as of 28, this is the link. This is a recent RFC, max length in RPQA, full of details, friendly user with great clarity to the topic. Next steps. Be a manners participant. Just 5.5% are manners participants. We have a huge gap, right? You have to disclose it, get in touch. As a developer, you don't need to be a developer, but there are different ways as you can help the project. Always you have to try to promote your peers to have compliance. If you need something else, I'll be around. Just reach me through the LinkedIn or over the coffee breaks, okay? I'd like to thank you. That's it. We have a quiz Could you please access it? 11 questions, and the first one will get a Netflix voucher free of charge. Valid just for those who are here today, okay? One to 2 minutes for those of you who are getting in, and then we shall start. Someone who won is someone who has done the homework. It's someone who knows what's going on. Are you having any issues to get in? "30 seconds to go, otherwise we're gonna run late." Are you all in? Shall we start? Very similar to Kahoot. The faster, the better. Multiple choice questions. There is a tag that you know that you have more than one option. Anybody else? When did manners started? Well, that was available in the presentation. Can you tell the year? The faster, the better. You're gonna get a higher score. Time's up. Well, the majority got that right, but still many people got that wrong. Gabriel Moreira is ranked in first place so far. Global and Brazilian community should improve. How and where should global and Brazilian community improve? What to be improved? That was well detailed during my slide presentation. I agree that we have to keep on improving, but global validation and coordination, they are our main bottlenecks. What does RPKI mean? The definition is available just everywhere, but you have to be fast and not Google it. That's a bit complicated because many people believe that it is a router. Renata is in the leadership, followed by Will. Which vendors are participants of Manners program? Equipment vendors, multiple choice. Three more people to go. The great majority. I'm going to switch to the next question. No comments or whatsoever. William Prado now has exceeded Renata. Which RIR is in the leadership of RPKI implementation ranking? That's an easy one. Time is almost up. I would love to be LACNIC, to be honest, but unfortunately, that's not the case. It would be great if everyone would be ranked in the top. I see a great growth for LACNIC. William now is in first place. Which RIR demands relying party agreement, RPI, to download TAL? This is a trap because it's quite recent. I don't know if you are all tuned to the lists, if you are following them closely. RIP, RIP would accept it to bring down RPA, but that's not yet available at the RPKI validator. But there is a new guideline that will soon be released. Which entity supports and keeps the Manners project? "95 people. I hope you got that right, otherwise, my bad. Internet Society is the one that supports the Manners project since the very beginning. ISOC, Internet Society, is the one to support. We have Luciano in first place and Zorello comes in second, which are PKI community invalid for route servers of the Internet Exchange point of traffic. We should have at least a vague idea about that. Almost 60 filtering communities. So it's quite all right if you don't get this question properly. Well, but quite a meaningful number. I'm happy. 131, in fact, it's for valid and not invalid. It's a standard provider. Luciano, coming first. We are almost done. 2 questions to go. How many communities are available in the route servers of IXBR? The project was recently updated with a longer community list. Check that out. There might be some functionality that can help you. Let's see it. 99. Much more than you thought. Tiago now is in the leadership, followed by Lucas George. What is the percentage of ASNs that are connected in the IX.BR which are not manners participants? I wish it would be that one. Correct answer, 5.5%. Yes, you guys are really paying attention. That's great. Last question. Who is liable to improve web security and participate and collaborate to manage projects? Let's see it. It should be all options above. Let's check that out. Lucas is the winner. Who is Lucas Jorge? 782 points. Lucas, are you there? Yes, please come and get later, okay? Talk to Tiago, is a digital voucher, okay? Thanks for your time and participation. Thank you, Tiago.
Well, let's continue discussing manners and top. Let's invite Gilberto Zorello of Nick BR to give us an update on these 2 projects. Gilberto, you have the floor. By the way, those that are watching us online, all materials are now available, so you can download them to check these presentations. And we have 3 languages, Portuguese, English, and Spanish. Hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm Gilberto Zorello. I'm in charge of the Zurich BR project. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to present this program, A More Secure Internet. That's the program I coordinate at NICBR. This is our agenda today. I'll tell you about the program. I'll give you an overview. Many of you are familiar with it anyway. I'll also give you a status report about the use of these standards. The idea behind the program is, of course, to reduce attacks to service denial. The basic idea is to disseminate the best network setting practices based on manners, also serving the notifications that ZBR sends that can be used in these attacks and then the top tool, which has been recently introduced and tests many settings that these web services or web email services provide. And also internet connection. This tool does all the testing and validates it all. And as a consequence of these actions, the result or the outcome is reducing attacks and service denials in Brazilian networks, and also improving routing security, reducing vulnerability, setting failures, and also really encouraging a culture of security among network operators. It should be present in everyone's mind that security is important, and when you are expanding networks, installing clients, and also mergers, these are very common today. You should take into account these best practices. They're really important. This program started in 2018, and it all across NIC. Actions start through CERT, that studies internet security, then SEPTRO, that does a great job in training, and many other events that they hold. Then IX, that puts in place route filters, their routing system, then Registro BR. That's where I come from. I'm do engineering there, and then systems. They participated in putting this tool TOP in place, TOP. So we provide presentations, courses, trainings. We interact with operators on networks. Those in this conference, they know me. So we talk online. There's great interaction with providers and large operators too. Then IX and filter implementation. We have many metrics as mentioned in GTera's presentation. You cannot manage anything without CIMAT. So we follow them up and find where action needs to be taken. I'll show you these KPIs later. This is the idea behind the program. You start from a network that has problems, that suffers attacks, and when you take all this action, solving problems, providing educational materials, providing courses, working on indicators, and so on and so forth, you end up having better internet services. Operator interaction. We hold regular meetings with large operators. We also meet with providers regularly, like 15,000 providers. Well, that's not possible. So I take those with the largest number of notifications and I invite them to a call. On this call, we talk about programs, the importance of checking notifications, and also I provided analysis of what can be seen on that network, and operators tend to like that meeting, that call. Then we follow them up. I send them monthly reports. This is what has been put in place. That's what we do with providers. In these meetings, we check how notification services work, sent by CERT, and then we have manners, or the tools that Tiago mentioned, to put up a report and talk to providers. And more recently, we talked to about the top tools. I have access to their database, so we see that, and we do this work. I'll now show you some of the figures, some of the KPIs that we follow. This is number of IP addresses per service since 2018 to October 2022. There are two things I'd like to highlight. At the beginning, you had a large number of IP addresses, about 700,000. So we had repeat attacks. Now, with interaction with the providers, this was frequent. Another point is, in the last few months, we reached a level of corrections. So we haven't exactly reached a limit, but things can be improved. If everyone takes care of these settings, this can be improved. Of course, we won't reach zero problems, but the network has been growing and the number of notifications is not growing. And this shows that this process is working. In other words, our administration services are working, are being effective. So we have here the number of notified IPs. So it's the same order of magnitude. And this means we have been evolving over time. Now, what are the services that get the most notified for large operators? And TV. I work with them. We have meetings. NTP. So it's hard for them to solve these problems. So they have many problems that need solving. And who is just these notifications? Two operators, basically. And for the total number of SPs, the problem is with the open recursive DNS manners. You will see the same image that Tiago has explained. I will not be repetitive. I'm just adding some information about Brazil. This is my idea here. This is the filter that Tiago presented about those four actions. I'd like to stress the following. You see here, 95% of filtering. What's the problem here? Well, we do have a problem there. It's not this is an average, and we have to be careful because averages can be misleading. So I broke that information down into ASs. I analyzed the last 12 months. This is information that I gathered from Manner's website. I checked the last 12 months, and 40 ASs generated hijacking and leak incidents, and 9 to 12 months of the year. In other words, these guys are having many problems. 46 out of in 5 to 8 months. Many times in a year. 1 to 4 times a year, that's a larger number. And the remainder, they generated no incident. This is what I wanted to show you. And you find these numbers on Manner's website. Manner's show the number of registrations. The total number, in this case, the total number of incidents. But they don't open ASs. When you open ASs, then you need to go to the tool to download JSON and make this analysis I've just done. The other spoofing, as mentioned, is also a high number, but that's indirect measuring. It depends on users' You have many providers here, in fact. So do you implement an anti-spoofing filter? Yes, but you cannot really know. We don't test against CADA. This is the percentage of the PIN DB, peering DB, and this is what Tiago said. And this is interesting. This shows how participants stand, manners participant worldwide. So this total number, 375,206, are in Brazil. That's the majority. Even in the from the American, the U.S. network. In 2020, we had 140, 2021, 174, so we are growing. There are more people joining. At least 30 ASs join every year. This is the rate, and that's interesting to show you. This is our program website, and then top. With top, this was a web tool. You could test it on the website with a domain. It would score your domain and show you details of everything that's taking place in the results. The idea is to help correcting problems. What do? They check IPv6, if that's put in place, what is being tested, DNSSEC, and if the recursive DNS is correctly set up. Also TLS, both on the website and for the email. For emails, you also test DMAC and other important settings that are tested. These are some of the results. I showed them last year at the launch, and now we have some numbers, some figures. So website testing, we done 23,000. Now single domains, 9,800. And who's top? Who's 100% right? That's 292. Then IPv6, 100% would be 2,300. IPv6, DNSSEC, 1973. And TLS 710, that's the highest number of topics at TLS. It may be set up, but it may have failures. So we see here that not all of them are okay, right? So we have 7% in TLS failure. So these are the percentages referring to public domains. Email now. The same thing. These are the tests that have been run. Top, just 33 of them are top. IPv6, DNSSEC, authenticity brands or marks, DMARC, and start TLS. Connection testing now. The number of tests that have been run, 65,000, then autonomous systems that were tested for 4,200, that's almost half. We have about 9,000. And then the number of, the recursive DNSs that were validated, and then I had 100% IPv6. These are the percentages. This is the number of tests that are run every month, about 1,500, 13 to 1,500 websites. And this, after the pandemic, when we started returning to face-to-face work, this was a peak in utilization. We traveled all around Brazil, really to advertise this tool. The same thing for emails. Have many, a much smaller number, about 400. And then connection testing. We have a larger number of tests, about 6,000. These are the sponsors or the associations that provide support to us, that help us advertise and make, they participate in our events and so on and so forth. So that's what I wanted to tell you. I have an additional 3 minutes and I'm at your disposal if you have any questions. Thank you, Gilberto. Any questions to Gilberto about this presentation? Let me just make sure there's no questions online either. Okay. Gilberto, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. That was great. Thank you. All right. Good.
Next, we have Tiago Set from Ed Uno. He'll talk about the Internet protocol, what to expect after 400 giga. Hello, everyone. Good morning. The last presentation before lunchtime. I'll try to be brief. What to expect after 400 gigas? I will start introducing Edge Uno. You probably have heard about Edge Uno thanks to our consultancy services and some data center. But Edge Uno is widely disseminated throughout Latin America. And we have some products, Edge, cloud, connectivity, and we want to take services as close as possible to our users, to the CDNs, at different IXs. We have a booth in the exhibition area. Come and visit us so we can keep talking furthermore. A spoiler. What is the answer to the main question? What to expect after 400 giga? 800 giga, and 1.6 tera. That is not a standard, and we have to understand that standardization, they take a while, and the whole Ethernet protocol standards, it's applied within the 3DF. This is a standard implemented by manufacturers, and it's under test for the 802 3DF, 1.6 tera. We had always dreamt to see an interface of 1 tera, but I don't think we are going to see it. We are going outside 400 to 800. This is exactly the spoiler that I'd like to share with all of you. And here we see a chart. This is a light counting consultants company where we have different optics, high-speed Ethernet optics report in 2022. This is where we are right now. We have still a huge interface demand for 10 giga and some 100 interface. 40 giga is dying, and the 40 giga became more attractive this year. Last year, and the modules they are getting into the market, as Julio told us, and some main data center operators and some telcos as well. And here we see the adoption of 1.6 T, which became real, and in the past year we are going to have a higher adoption, and 1.6 tera, even more than that. Here we're talking about 2026 to 2027. Well, this gives us a market perspective. Let's talk about 400 giga and recall some concepts which are which are very important. The 400 model, they have some technical characteristics. Here are some complicated acronyms. The idea is to reuse some of those technologies. 400 giga, it became a reality available in the market that is standardized by the task force. That's important to understand. Adalberto Franz. Here, optical routers. So this is a standard, not this is IOF, and we have the IR Plus. That is an interoperability. 400 gigas, it started with the LLO8, and now we are going through 4. You're going to understand what is that 8 and what is that 4. It sells a concept where all interfaces from 40 gigas, we use the concept of multiple channels. We have different fibers using that signal. On a monomode fiber, we use different fiber lengths, and the evolution of the market. They are the first models that raised last year for initial market penetration, but they allow to use 4 channels of 20 gigabytes. LL4. Four gigas, thanks to another technology. Those of you that work with opticals on radio frequency, you know exactly what the terminology is. Ethernet has adopted from 400 gigas a modulation of PAN4, 2 bits per symbol. A 100 gigabytes per second, and the same applies to a modem of 25. Use PAN4, more bits per symbols, and you duplicate the capacity. A FAC technology. There is a higher energy consumption. This is the main challenge nowadays, to have that technology available in a miniature model, low consumption. 4 channels of 400 gigabytes, we can apply the same technology and to have a model of LL1. So I go back 100 gigas that we use daily. Instead of using it with 4 of 25, we use that with one single channel. Instead of using 4 lasers, I have just one transmission laser, one receptor, and my problem is solved. This is the electrical connectivity. So we have just one laser. I get a little bit more in the DSP, and then the 100 gigas becomes cheaper. The evolution of each one of them, they have a reflex in some benefits. This is an important resource because it requires a breakout. What is that? If you have 100 gigas port, you may break that down in 25, 4 of 25. Usually you have a router or a switch with a 400 or with a breakout cable or a panel. They are independent. 400 gigas. 100 gigas for PAN 4 is not compatible to our 100 gigas modules that we have nowadays. So you cannot get your interface that is there today and to use it to interconnect to interface of 400 gigas where there was a breakout. It has to be an interface of 100 gigas. The breakout is gaining new adopters. Breakout physically, there is no room for that, and it helps with intensity. You may open several doors with a small rack space, low intensity. The physical format, this is not the protocol standard. That is the physical standard, which is the optical model, and the oldest ones, they call them GPIC. I like to call that GPIC. That is the physical format where there is a plugged component. QSF PDD double density and octal SFP. That should go to one side, to another. That will define someone that will adopt a solution. So today, who is in the front line is the PDT. The main advantage is that it has a higher dissipation. But some of the evolutions, they are very, very close. And the DD has an advantage which is compatible to the other generation. And that is compatible, and the new generation of the SP is compatible, and it gets to the market adoption. In addition to the gray interfaces, we have the 400. This is a standard for long distances. You are going to bring the characteristics of an optical signal to a plugged model. That was the intention. There are some other standards. They have to improve the 400 ZR. Same physical formats. And the gray interface, which is the most traditional interface, and that represents a gain for intensity. 400 ZR, as you saw before. We have to take the optical transponder to a small module to fit a router or a switcher. This is another model of 16 kms with double polarization. You may place 48 or 68 channels of 400 gigas in one single fiber. This is a giant ability. All of that becomes a miniature in small modules where there is a scale gain. And a fast comparisons to the ZRs. That is an industry update with the Open ZR Plus. 400 ZR has some well-defined characteristics, and the Open ZR opens a little bit more that in accordance to each manufacturer. The standard one adopted by the IOF just with 400 gigas. FAC is also different. Another header. In the ZR, you have just point-to-point, whereas here you may apply that in a multi-layer long distances, where we may reach up to 2,000 kilometers. That would be unbearable. A submarine transponder, it's a small module, and today we are getting very closer to these characteristics. What about consumption? A little bit higher. This is where we have that physical format dispute. Theoretically, that just goes up to 18. But there are some characteristics that they are adopting, and we may reach 10 watts DD. And then 800 gigas, 1.6 terabytes. This is some types of heat dissipators, KSFPDD. Some of those were adopted, and they have a large part of the switch which is outside. It just keeps increasing to have more layers, more ships, and it has to dissipate the heat. And those modules, they come with those heat dissipators above them. So please be careful, let's not burn our fingers. 800 gigas, which is the standard, 100 serial gigas, and reuses the architecture, reuses the laser and characteristics to have what? 8 800 gigas, 8 channels of 100 to electric and optical within 2 interfaces of 400. So far, we are not talking about closed 800 gigas interface because that has not yet been standardized, but that is a standard. We may have 800 interface with a breakout of 400, 800 gigas and 6 tera. They focus on breakout interface to reach interface of dedicated links. This is the characteristic that we get out of 400 giga, and we reuse the same components for 800 gigas with a greater intensity of ports and a greater ability, great capacity. So what do we have? We have a physical format. The only one that we have presented so far is this one, but there might be others. The market has 2 or 3 alternatives to an extended format of 800, where we may have other layers, more energy consumption, because now 8 lasers DSP for the conversion. The physical format, it's higher adopted because it's compatible to the prior generation. You get a switch, you get a door. If you don't want to use 800 the first days, you may have a mod of 400. And if you have to grow, you just change the optical mode. The 800 model DD format. And this under discussion. A task force is public. They have been published. This is somewhat available. It's a technical information, but for those of you that like bits and bytes, you can follow that as a development. You have the 800DF. The idea is to focus on 800 1.6. They started this year, and this is what we forecast. It's a bit far away. Operators, they need that. We have a new working group, a new market forum. It's not new, but it has been renamed. That was a consortium, Internet 25 gigas. So this consortium for breakout is still 400 gigas of internet, but you have 2 interfaces within one single module, 800 gigas. There are some suites for equipments. This is just breakout, 2 of 400, okay, it's wrong in the slides. Or 8 of 100. So next year, we have Swift routers available in the market. You may ask to your suppliers. These are modules that follow the ITC standard for interfaces, breakouts. 1.6, how about that? If we're talking about 800 gigas with 8 of 100, the idea is that we can take the serial channel of 100 and then we move it to 200. And it's not well defined how to do that. We are going to change the modules from PAN 4 to 8, or we are going to make any difference. No, let's use modems here with a higher serial velocity or a higher wavelength. This is under discussion in the 3A and in the industry to see how to adopt it. This is the first time that we see a two-fold leap in terms of capacity. We had 2 megas before, and then we leaped to 100. After 100, another leap of 1 giga, 10 gigas. And the 10 gigas, we have the first time the 4 times leap. That's a leap. After 100 gigabytes, we have another leap of 4 times. And now is the first time that we can see that from 400 to 800. And the 400 leap to 1.6 terabytes is not yet feasible on scale. We have to gain scale to have cost efficiency to that, but that's not quite yet feasible. But there is an evolution. More and more, we see that lower leap, 1.6 would be ideal leap, at least 4 times. 1.6 tera has this initial ability of a breakout 16, 4 of 800, 2 of 800, and so far everything suggests that it's not going to be in plugged modules, it will be embarked. There is a shape, a ways, the router with the lasers within the equipment and just optical connections in the frontal part. The future, we hope to have some sort of plugged modules, but today's technology consider the energy consumption. We can no longer have more dissipators. We have to place that within the equipment, where you buy a router, 32 ports, LR, but you are not flexible. But this is the way that the industry is following. This is the technology called as onboard optics. You skip out of the pluggable optics model, and then there is an electric switch package, and you take the optical to the equipment or to the ship itself. So optics, it's coming to the equipment to enhance energy efficiency. So it's forcing the industry to adopt that, okay? That should be present with 800 gigas and 1.6 terabits. This is a module of flexibility. So these are the ways that the industry is following. Maybe within 2 years, we might get back here to the IX. We change a little bit because there are some market adjustments, okay? These are the novelties. If you have any questions, just let me know. Tiago, you made a comparison to the radio. You have the KMMs, and you may consider sacrificing a little bit of the band to increase the distances. Am I going to be able to place, say, 400 modules or to modulate them to reach 200 because I'm going to place more distances? The OpenZR tends to be that, but then you may have different channels, 300, 100. For the gray interface, the most traditional one, we are not able to do that. That is fixed. There is the Flex E, multiples of 25 gigas. But that has not gained any adoption. But the E3E for 400 gigas, that's for 4, that's fixed with no alterations. ZR, you may change. How about the Kappa opticals? Looking at the DW, the optical cover will become a piece within the switch. Is that so? And if that burns, if a part burns, do I lose the whole equipment? Exactly, that's it. They adopt more electrical components and they bring that to the equipment. Before there was an optical transmission network. What? Upo the MOOCs? No idea about what he said. Now they put everything within a module. The next step is to remove from it and place within the switch. If you realize that that's not good, fine, you may not follow it. In one of your charts, you showed that 40 giga tends to die as time goes by. Can you see that to the 400 as well as that is available in the 800? I have a question. How many 40 gigas interface have you asked to the IXBR? None so far. Adoption is not decreasing, but not the 400. This is what the market perceives as component ships, pandemic, logistics. So standardization is ready to go. 400 gigas came to stay. 800 generates doubts because that's twofold growth. Maybe 800 is the one. If you could elaborate. 400, but you are already talking about 800. Come on. We see a huge difficulty in the industry to deliver equipment, and I guess that the pandemic and this problem has widely impacted development. There is a need to take the best from band energy saving. And what's your opinion for us, we human beings? How about deadlines, time scale? That is based on a module production. And if you have web scales, the volume that they buy, it makes some distortion in the chart. It seems to be a giant adoption, but there are 3 web scales that are buying that. But we perceive that the market has put a halt in the 400 gigas. Modules are ready, but not the devices. The devices are delayed. High costs, we have the whole logistic issue. Equipments are more expensive. Telco carriers, data center carriers, everyone has put a halt in the 400 gigas. So I think we have still room to go with 400, and the 800 that is being born, it's 2 of 400 internet gigas. Maybe the next IX Forum. Okay, thanks, Thiago. We are running late. We have to stop for lunch now. Thank you. Yes, lunch, please, lunch. We deserve. And shall be back at 2:10. Thank you, wonderful. Have a lovely lunchtime.